Hi, I'm Kayl, and I'm a pastor's daughter.
And I'm Eden, and I'm also a pastor's daughter.
And this is Gay Girls, Good God.
Christian content from a queer perspective. So today we are having a totally normal one. If you haven't noticed, we're dressed for all of you YouTube viewers as Bob and Larry from VeggieTales.
Yes, we thought it would be a great idea to put a lot of effort into our look for a primarily audio-based platform.
Yeah, so for all the podcast listeners, just imagine Bob and Larry with big jiggly breasts and big eyelashes, drag queens, but like hot slut porn star Bob and Larry. So
exactly.
So the originals.
So the
originals. Really.
Oh, well, we are going to. Don't you worry. We're gonna briefly touch on that a little bit.
Okay, glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. So today we are talking about VeggieTales. Kayl is going to be talking about VeggieTales.
Yes, we're gonna go into the lore a little bit because it's definitely something that I think I think the best way to refer to it is like a subculture phenomenon.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah, because if you know VeggieTales.
The girls who get it,
the
get
girls
it.
who get it, and yeah, I'll definitely be referencing later on. I might do a second when there's a lot to cover, but today we're just gonna dive into the lore a little bit.
Before we jump into it, though, I have a question for you.
Of course.
Sister Kayl, who are you praying for lately?
Sister Eden. So yesterday was Halloween.
It sure
for
was.
our listeners.
It sure was.
And I had this specific trauma after Halloween every year. You talked about it briefly, but my dad would come up with this concept of community bowl. Where, actually, I started it because little Kayl was like, we can all share and everything can be great. And so I was like,
communist.
This is, yes, a little communist Kayl, of course. And so I would put out a little bowl of all of the candy and I'd be like, we can all share this and make the community bowl. And then I came back the next day and like all the good stuff was gone. And my dad was like, it was the community bowl. And so ever since then, that was like what he would say when he would take my candy, like the good candy. And so I'm praying for all of the pastor's kids and just kids out there in general whose candy is being stolen from them as we speak.
You know what? I'm praying for them too. That's awful. Now you literally living out the tragedy of the commons.
Yeah.
That's literally like,
it's like Miss Trunchbull and Matilda. She's like much too nice for children.
Much too nice for children.
Yeah.
Very that.
So, Sister Eden, are you also praying for the Halloween kids or are you praying for something else as well? Or?
You know what? I'm praying for the Halloween kids, but I think I'm also praying for all of the trans bitches who for Halloween yesterday were like, what if I just like did drag? What if I dressed up as a girl? You know, like I know I'm a boy, but what if I'm Daphne? Or all of the dudes who are like, well, I know I'm a girl, but like
me going as Shaggy.
Exactly. I'm praying for them. Baby, from this point, if you just did your cross-dressing Halloween costume, you're about 2 years out from figuring some things out for real. I'm praying for you.
We're praying for you, yes.
You're going to get this, girl. I promise it gets better. It gets better. Like, obviously, look at me. It gets better.
It gets better?
Yeah.
Maybe one day you'll be a cucumber.
Yeah, the innuendo of which does not escape me.
No. Okay, so are you ready to talk about VeggieTales?
I am ready. Can I give a little bit of our personal background?
Yeah, before we go, what is your experience with VeggieTales? I think it's very interesting and literally one of the most heartbreaking things about our friendship that we don't share.
Great question. So for listeners and for Kayl's benefit, I am familiar with VeggieTales. I know the characters. I know some of the episodes at least. Homesteverist. Kayl, your father, who is a pastor, was a little bit more like fun, 2000s like youth group leader.
Yeah,
yes?
My dad was pretty chill. He's like stuck in 2005, I think.
Whereas mine is a lot more, I want to say conservative, but I want to say like dry when it comes to religion. No modern music, no youth groups, no VeggieTales stuff like that. So growing up, I watched a few episodes like with friends and things, but in my family, it was not allowed because it was considered heresy and disrespectful to God because we were portraying real life, quote unquote, stories with vegetables and in a silly way that isn't true to the Bible, and that just will not stand in this household.
And that actually was a pretty common complaint, and I would talk about it in a different episode. Like I would love to talk about one day like sort of the history of the acceptance like at the time of VeggieTales and sort of the creators Phil Vischer and Mike I can never say it right, Mike Nawrocki. They're the creators, and their journey really sort of mirrors Bob and Larry. And I would originally set out to like talk about that, but then I was like, I just want to talk about the lore. I got to set a foundation.
We know for certain there's going to be several VeggieTales episodes headed by Kayl.
Yeah, for sure.
Your one true passion in life.
My one it really is insane, because like I will talk about VeggieTales forever, and I go through these phases. I still watch it now, and I just think, if you know me, that's one of the strangest things about me is my current adult obsession with VeggieTales.
The strangest things about you?
Well, maybe not.
Dear listener, she is lying.
I am lying. I'm very strange. I'm weird. Have you ever seen me without a hat? Jughead.
You ever seen me without this red face?
Have you ever seen me not doing a bit? I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
Oh my god.
Anyway, let's dive into the VeggieTales cinematic universe.
Please do. So the way this episode is going to be structured, you're going to be educating me on a lot of what I missed out on, yes?
Yes. So the point of this episode is to sort of give an overview about the show and its significance to me personally, and just sort of like again, like the subculture phenomenon that it was, because I definitely will be referencing it many times. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with it, and plus, I love the show.
You love the show.
So yeah, I'll be covering some controversies, some certain things lightly. Yeah, I definitely don't think it's the greatest piece of television ever, but for all purposes today, I will be talking as though it is.
I would disagree.
You do think
it's The Sopranos. And then it's VeggieTales.
Absolutely.
Yeah. VeggieTales, Sopranos, Grey's Anatomy. Mm-hmm. What's below that?
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Neon. Exactly.
No. So yeah, some things that I'll be covering lightly, but trust me when I come back to it. So there's just some things that I might not hit on today. And so if you're like, I wish you would have talked about this, which I'm sure the people will be raving, like, I want more VeggieTales. I can just, foresee it.
All 12 of our listeners, thank you for listening to our first episode, by the way. Thank you. We love you.
We do. And we actually probably do, because we probably know you.
Yeah, we parasocially are in love with you, and also socially because, hi, Mom, we love you.
So I won't be talking about silly songs too much, which is probably going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, because that is probably the biggest thing that kids remember, or not kids, but like people our age remember from VeggieTales is Silly Songs with Larry, because that is just insane. Anyway, and then I also won't be talking about Phil's personal journey through the you can really see Phil's personal journey spiritually as the show progresses, and that is something to be talked about in itself. But for now, I'll just kind of say that it goes from for example, the first episode is called "Where's God When I'm Scared," and now the most recent stuff they're doing is like the League of Incredible Vegetables. So it definitely kind of shies away from the strictly like Bible-based stuff, and that's all I'll say for now.
Is that like his spiritual journey, or is that more of like...
no, he does, like, I watched a documentary that he did sort of about it. I'll be referencing a lot of stuff that I learned that I didn't already know. I learned from a Fundy Fridays video. Fundy Fridays
Shout out
is
Fundy
YouTuber,
Fridays.
Reverend Jen. She's great. She's really helped me with like my deconstruction journey. And so yeah, she talked a lot about this, and there's also a book that he wrote called Me, Myself, and Bob, I think.
That's cute.
Yeah, and so he really sort of like, he describes it, because he's coming at it from a Christian perspective, but he kind of talks about how it went from something that like being a passion project to slowly morphing into like something that was more meant for entertainment and also good values. Sort of like the real Bible story aspect of it kind of went on the back burner to overall just like good quality family friendly entertainment.
That makes sense.
Anyway, so while I'm there, I was going to give you a quick overview of the two creators, how it came to be, and the show. So they met at St. Paul Christian College, which is now Bible College, which is now Crown Christian College. For anyone familiar with that, they met through a puppet ministry, which I'll talk about this later too. And I think that's why I resonate so much with VeggieTales. Is I'm a puppet ministry girl. That I was all up in that shit growing up. I loved doing puppets. So many of my memories are me and my brother back behind a puppet stage. So they met and they were sort of working on things together. Mike, who is the voice of Larry, Phil is the voice of Bob. Just know that their relationship is kind of similar to Bob and Larry's, and I'll talk about it a little bit later when I talk about them. But Mike's major was actually in biology. He wanted to go to med school, and this was just sort of something he did because his best friend did it. Like, he was just helping his best friend. But Phil's vision was always to, like, create this animated TV show. He was really into CGI animation, which was, like, not the big thing at the time, but he, like, really wanted to work in it because he was interested in it. And so throughout college, Mike took jobs helping at, like, TV companies and, like, animation studios and things like that. But he still was ultimately, like, focused on med school until Phil was like, hey, man, let's do this for realsies. Are you with me, brother? And he was like, hell yeah, brother. And then they kissed, and that's exactly how it happened.
Shut up.
They originally started out knowing they wanted to make a Bible-based, faith-based television show. They didn't know what. They started out wanting to do, like, chocolate bars. Like, Larry's original, like, promo was, like, a chocolate bar. And then his wife was like, parents aren't going to want their kids watching chocolate bars. That's not going to enforce good habits. So they made them vegetables.
Oh,
and
love that.
Phil
Women influencing things.
Yes, exactly.
Shout
Actually,
out to
his
women.
wife, Lisa, is like really heavily involved, at least in the beginning. She voiced some of the characters even. Yeah.
Lisa.
It really was like, it really started as like a family, like friends affair.
This is like
thing.
an Ella Fitzgerald situation. We are erasing the people who are actually... Wait, I said the wrong person. Who am I thinking of?
Are you thinking about not Marie Curie, the DNA lady?
No, wait, we're saying all sorts of different people. No, I'm thinking Zelda Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah.
Zelda Fitzgerald. This is a really Zelda Fitzgerald situation. The misogyny, erasing women's contributions to science, aka VeggieTales.
Yeah,
it will not stand.
She is the mother of the vegetables. And Phil's mother said the only two rules, I'm paraphrasing this, but the only two rules for the show was that Jesus could not be portrayed as a vegetable, and that there should be no even hint to the fact that vegetables can receive salvation. Like,
Bitch, shut up!
Like, the vegetables cannot accept Christ. The vegetables cannot go to heaven.
She said, okay, as someone who comes from a Christian background, I think those are very smart and very, like...
Oh, absolutely.
Like, yeah, like, okay, that would be a little bit disrespectful. This is like the Jesus costume thing we were talking about last week. It's like dressing up as Jesus, kind of weird, low-key. Making a vegetable Jesus, kind of weird.
Kind of weird.
Also, like, if we're saying vegetables have salvation, that means they have souls. That's a weird can of worms. I think she had some good foresight.
She
to be
definitely
like,
did. But I just think that's like, I mean, it obviously makes sense to us, but it's just kind of like a funny thing. Like, not even imply that vegetables can have a chance at salvation.
That it got brought up.
Yeah.
That broccoli's going to hell. I'll tell you what. And
Yes.
it is. And it is.
Okay, so the overview of the show, the way the show is set up is there's the host of the show, Bob and Larry, which I think is just meant to represent Phil and Mike.
Makes sense.
As, the hosts of the show, and they will get letters or emails in from a kid who has a problem, and then they will show like a 30 to 45 minute show based on the problem that the child has, and they will have some sort of moral to the story. There will be silly songs with Larry somewhere in there in the middle, and then at the end they'll have a Bible verse with QWERTY, and there's like this whole thing between Bob and QWERTY where Bob's like, oh, I hate this song, and Larry's like, no, it's a good song. And so that's kind of sort of the setup of the show. There was also some spinoffs. There was Larry Boy had his own show and around like when I was growing up, and it was like its own like animation style. And so yeah. So some controversies we're going to address.
Oh.
Yes.
Not the controversy.
Just, obviously.
Bob and Larry getting on YouTube and doing an apology.
Addressing the controversy.
Bye, sisters.
Yes.
Bye, veggies.
By veggies. So there are a lot of the critiques that people have and the controversies are true of every single television show of that era.
KT.
Yeah. So like things like there are definitely some harmful stereotypes portrayed in the characters and things like that. Yeah. I'll get there when I talk about the characters a little bit more.
I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah. I really wasn't too much either. I always kind of like got the vibes that I never really sat back and like thought about how, because there are certain like racial stereotypes that are portrayed in negative ways always throughout media.
Yeah. Especially in like the 2000s, it was bad.
Yeah.
You cannot go and watch anything from the 2000s without getting assaulted with transphobia
that's the thing.
and racism. I was trying to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for the first time, and like season 1, they're like, oh, her, the tranny, and it cuts to her.
It's like a whole plot
big
line.
fucking dick in her pants.
That's
First
like
of all,
her whole plot line.
hot. Hey, tranny, hit me up. Second of all, what are we doing?
What are we doing? And she comes back later.
So there was a tranny vegetable, is what you're saying?
No. Not
an
VeggieTales.
eggplant. An eggplant.
Nar. So as all media did, it did slowly start to move away from those stereotypes again, like
Slay.
I'll talk about. And then we have to address the cucumber in the room, and that is
What are you trying to say? I'm getting it removed. Give me some time.
no, I'm talking about the indoctrination.
The indoctrination.
So obviously, with any Christian religious-based show, you are having to ask yourself the question, like, this is probably being used as part of a larger system of power that is overall destructive and not great. But in my personal opinion, and opinion of a lot of people, the weakest part of the show is like the religious like tie-in. At least for me, like watching it back, like the religious stuff isn't great. You don't watch it for that. At least me, it's like it's just funny.
That's valid. However, I think as you know and recognize, but I think that's the insidious thing about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Is like it knows that just straight up Christian stuff is weak and is like it's the bitter pill or whatever. So it has this heaping spoonful of sugar, which is the VeggieTales episode with all the like humor and references and like winks and like interesting story. And it's not the actual Bible story. It's like a funny version. And then it gets to the end and it's like, By the way,
QWERTY has a verse for us.
Exactly, like Christianity is the one true religion, and you should not question it, and we should normalize it, and like all those things.
Yeah, that's definitely again, like I'm very aware that like there is just something sort of like oddly unsettling about the fact that these vegetables are trying to convert you to
and like
an oppressive system of power.
I don't even know if it needs to be said, but like this is just our perspective as people who are not Christians. Like the fact that it's so popular and it's a Christian TV show, like obviously it's not like Christianity as a whole's fault that it's popular or whatever. It was a good show.
Yeah.
And like for Christians, I'm sure it's like, oh, whatever. If you don't like the Christian part, just don't watch it. It's like we get that. It's just that this is just one of many ways that Christianity tries to adapt itself to like modern culture to proselytize in many ways.
Yeah, so indoctrination, and speaking of indoctrination, capitalism has indoctrinated itself into our society and in its culture. And in honor of that, I think we should go to an ad break. We'll be right back.
Coming soon to theaters.
Long ago, there was a grill, and in that grill was a city of meat. Not just any meat. Christian meat that follows the one true God Almighty, and among them was God's meatiest warrior, Sirloin. Next summer, joined Sirloin in his battle to save the grill from the fiery depths of hell and charcoal. Sirloin, defender of meat.
Hi everyone, today we are so excited to be sponsored by the cheap-ass water-based makeup that I bought off of Amazon 2 years ago. It is all inside of our ears and it feels so delicious there. It looks great on camera, except that it doesn't, and we're kind of serving cunt.
I'm sticky!
And we're back.
Welcome back with some great sponsors. We really love them and all their support.
Thank you guys.
I'm so excited for that movie, by the way.
Right? Sirloin?
Sirloin.
He kind of looks like my ex-boyfriend. Oh my god, hi. Hey, Sirloin.
Right. So now that we've kind of talked about the origins and the basis of the show, are you ready to dive in some hardcore lore?
I would love to, because I'm only familiar with like the parody VeggieTales stuff because that's what I was allowed to watch growing up. But I don't know the lore of like the characters and things.
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna start to talk about the show. We're gonna talk about the aesthetics a little bit.
Okay.
So it is CGI animation, which was something that was very new whenever VeggieTales started, and you can really see sort of how the animation evolves and the style throughout the first 10 years, like specifically. Their transition went from more like unique background characters that were like sort of like hand drawn almost, even though it was like CGI, into more carrot-based looking vegetables. So the background, so like there used to be like cauliflower and broccoli and celery and pumpkins and bell peppers in the background.
Okay.
And then as the show went on and it became like smoother, they would just sort of like put carrots and gourds to be the background characters.
Okay.
And I think that's partially because it was like a lot of work to go and do like a whole bunch of different types of vegetables, but also those were just more like pleasing to the eye because they're more like human shaped, I guess.
That makes sense.
But I will say that there's still more like this unrealistic like vegetable expectation in the VeggieTales cinematic universe, because like I'm just thinking of any young like cauliflower out there that does want to see representation on the screen.
You know what? That's also very like misogynistic. We are prizing phallic vegetables over any other.
That is a good point.
Yeah, so in today's psychoanalytic reading of VeggieTales, we're...
Yeah, it's definitely not just because it was more to the silhouette. It was
No.
definitely phallic. That
Listen,
was the intention.
Listen, if I learned one thing from my English degree, it's that everything is secretly about penises, except for penises, and that's about power.
Damn. I should also note that the Larry Boys spinoff has, like I said, it's on more traditional cartoon animation style.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2014, they tried this reboot spinoff called VeggieTales in the House, and then 4 seasons later, VeggieTales in the City, and they did a new animation style, and everyone hated it so much.
Oh my God, it's like Fuller House.
Yeah, and so and Blue from Blue's Clues, same thing. And then so in 2019, they went back to the original animation style or CGI animation style, and that is also whenever the original creators took back over as producers.
So there was a time where the original creators weren't producers?
Yes, they did. I believe. I'll have to this might not be true, but I believe that there was a time they stepped back because what I read, it did make a note to mention that in 2019 they restructured it and they came back. So I'm assuming to come back you must have once left. Maybe.
That's a safe assumption.
Yes. So now to talk about the cast and their tropes.
Okay.
So these are generic. These are generic descriptions of the characters and just like general canon. Now I do have my own personal stories of these characters that I'll share a little bit. But if y'all want my fan fictions about Bob and Larry, and all of that stuff, just let me know and I'll put those out there. And so what I love about VeggieTales is the way that they set up the episodes and the way that they design the characters is it almost creates this I think it's called a commedia. I wrote it down somewhere. Hello.
Dell'arte,
that would have it. Commedia dell'arte, which is just like having these stock characters that you put them in a situation and then they just like naturally all fall into their roles and play the same role every time.
That thing that's like never put me in a situation.
Never put me in a situation.
The VeggieTales creators being these like sick fucks that are like, what if we put a cucumber in a really difficult spot?
What if we did surgery on a carrot?
Watch What Happens Live, but instead of Andy Cohen, it's some Christian dude like rubbing his hands together.
Yeah. Okay, so let's many of the characters' debuts started as allusions to legendary like comedy duos or legendary just fixtures in television and things like that. And then after that, it sort of like kept the same name, kept the same general characteristics, and were just a different character. So I kind of always saw them, as I'll talk about a little bit, as like actors, as like because of the nature of the show, like the way it's set up is you have the show that they're putting on, and then you have the episodes that they show on the show. VeggieTales is kind of meta.
This is just like a Wes Anderson film.
Exactly, like a Wes Anderson film.
We need Wes Anderson to do the next VeggieTales.
Absolutely, we
Fixed camera angles, but it's just like Bob and Larry having a love affair.
Yeah. Speaking of their love affair, let's talk about Bob and Larry.
I would love to talk about Bob and Larry.
So Bob and Larry were based on this sort of like Abbott and Costello duo.
Okay.
And they're very much so. I think it's time that we introduce them slightly to the concept of butch lesbian, manic pixie dream girl.
Oh, okay. Okay, dear listener, this is our lore. Eden and Kayl lore.
Episode 2, Kayl and Eden lore drop.
Yeah, we accidentally, once when we were a little bit too high, reinvented the idea of yin and yang, the gender binary, I think as all stoners do at one point in their life. And because we're narcissists, we were like, well, our worldview must be the most important.
Exactly.
And now we subsequently apply it to everything else in our lives.
Yeah, so you have manic pixie, which is definitely Larry, and then butch lesbian, which is definitely Bob.
So could I ask you to list some other things that are the butch lesbian archetype?
So Germany and France. Germany is definitely butch lesbian, and France is definitely manic pixie dream girl. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. You wanna? I forgot which one is which because
well, see, that's the thing.
They're like
Tolkien is very butch lesbian in that he's very cut and dry, linguist. C.S. Lewis is very manic pixie, and it's more about ideas and beauty and things like
and
that.
Then the writing is sort of swapped.
But then the writing is swapped, exactly.
And that is similar to Bob and Larry. So
because in the yin there is yang.
Exactly, and in the yang there is
yin.
yin. So they're canonically roommates and platonic life partners.
You're fucking lying to me.
I saw in the thing as sort of like they were referencing the odd couple of just like they're just two bros who live together. Nothing gay about that.
Nothing gay. Totally Christian.
Yeah, totally Christian. And the way that the creator describes the relationship is Bob wants to help kids, Larry wants to help Bob. So definitely sort of that. Yeah, very cute.
Wait, that's so sweet.
Yeah, which leads me so like as the host, which again, that's sort of like saying Phil wants to help kids, but Mike wants to help Phil. He like dropped out of med school to help his best friend create his dream.
For a second, I forgot that was the name of the creators, and I thought you were gonna say Phil and Dan. And I was like,
God,
listen,
no!
we are already in fan fiction area. We don't need to like Can I do a quick aside about the story of the fan fiction?
Absolutely.
Okay, real quick. One time in sophomore year, I was just talking about this the other day. I entered a short story writing competition. I got second place. I was like, great, second place. I go to the awards ceremony with my grandmother and my mom, and they ask us to read something from our passage. I was like, okay, great. I read something from mine, and then the girl who got first got up there. She's giving very Tumblr. She's wearing a lanyard with like pins on it. She has like shaggy hair or whatever. Honestly, cunt, slay. She starts reading from her thing, and I'm like,
wait a minute.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a minute. I soon realize this is a Dan and Phil fan fiction that she had submitted as a short story. And all these oblivious boomers who are judging it and have no idea who they are like, oh, these original characters, Dan and Phil, these gay bitches that are arguing. I was blown away.
Interesting how fan fiction has dug its way into mainstream. Like it has like become its own type of literature. Like like all of like 50 Shades of Grey was a fanfic of Twilight originally, and then there was that whole Harry Styles fanfic after, I think is what it was called.
Yep, and like Shadow and Bone, or like something. One of those authors, she started this fanfic. A lot of modern authors started this fanfic. Women love smut. And I love women, so
absolutely, I support women's rights and wrongs.
I support women's rights, wrongs, and I support women's proclivity for obsessing over internet dick.
Yes, exactly. Back to Bob and Larry.
Back to the Christian content that we prize.
So that's sort of about Bob and Larry's dynamic together. Let's go into Bob specifically. So as a host, I'm going to talk about Bob and Larry as a host and then as a character. As a kid, I thought Bob was supposed to represent God. Because at least like as the host, because there is this sense of sort of like moral superiority, and like I guess as being raised Christian, you are taught to look for that dynamic of power, and you're supposed to look for that hierarchy in everything you consume. And so I was like, oh, so it's like Bob is God and like Larry is Jesus.
Mama,
except Larry's a little flawed.
Butch lesbian, God the Father, manic pixie dream girl, Jesus Christ the Son.
Exactly. And so as a character, he always sort of plays Larry's sidekick. He's always sort of the stick in the mud. There's that I wanted to play Mousetrap in the Toy That Saved Christmas. He's always sort of like the one like, you guys. He's that kind of character.
You roll your dice, you move your mice. Nobody gets hurt.
And he's just, so he's very hesitant and stand backish. So that's him as a character. So Larry. Now, here is my fascination with Larry.
You said you're fascinated with Larry?
I am.
Okay.
And so, you know, they say if you really start to study something, if you get close enough, you'll begin to see a mirror. And that is what happened with Larry. I looked so deep into that toothy smile that back at me stared a girl known as Kayl.
You stared into the abyss, and the abyss sang a silly song with Larry back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was just something about Larry that is just so human and so relatable.
Okay.
See,
I see myself in Bob.
Well, yeah, I think we because we go back and forth, but
yeah.
I definitely think me specifically, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I think I am Larry, and I'll tell you why. Here's me to plead my case. Mm-hmm. So there's something about Larry that is fundamentally flawed, it seems. And it seems like he's always sort of learning the lesson with the kid, and he's always having a problem at the same time, of course, as a host.
That's beautiful.
And he's just kind of a guy that tries his best. He is looking for help and guidance. And it's crazy because as a character, he usually plays the lead or the hero of it. And I just think it's an interesting dynamic. So I would say that as host, Bob is definitely the top. Larry is definitely the bottom. However,
we're circling back to this.
When it comes to the characters they portray in their own productions, I believe that Larry is the top and Bob is the bottom. And going back to the creators, I definitely think it's a similar dynamic, because when it comes to the show, Mike, who plays Larry, is definitely the one who brings life to it, whereas Phil is the very pragmatic one, but he takes a lesser role in the show.
So you think that bottoms are lesser, is what I'm hearing.
I shouldn't say
so
that.
You think that
Bitch,
bottoms do nothing.
What? What?
Two bottoms yelling at each other. So why do you hate yourself?
Yeah, Yeah, that might just be what it is. Okay, so moving on from our main two, I'll circle back to them a little bit later when we talk about like the writing. Let's talk about Junior Asparagus. As a kid, I hated Junior Asparagus. Junior Asparagus is a small asparagus. That's what Larry Boy refers to him to in the Fit from Outer Space. Asparagus. He says he is carrying a small asparagus. I think that Junior sort of represents the main audience or the target demographic of the show, which is the kids, especially in like Larry Boy and in the earlier episodes, especially the first one, Where's God When I'm Scared. He is the one who is like being helped out in the show. He's the one who has a problem or is struggling with something and who learns the lesson along the way. That being said, I hate that whiny bitch.
Oh, is Junior a boy or a girl?
I would assume he is sort of portrayed as a boy because they have him doing masculine things, and in the scope of Christian media, since they have him doing masculine things, he is most likely a boy. And I think they refer to him. Yeah, Junior Asparagus is definitely a boy. What am I talking about? Yeah.
No, I hear that you're not. I hear that Junior Asparagus is a non-binary icon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 5-year-old asparagus. Who the fuck knows? And so. Yeah, so moving on, we have Mr. Nezer, and here's where we're going to start talking about some issues. So Mr. Nezer's voice was inspired by Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas, who is voiced by a black man, and Paul Visser, the creator, does the voice. And so it's definitely sort of... And so they actually took him away later, and then they brought him back. I don't think they changed voice actors, but they're like, and then they brought him back.
I love the idea of being like, oh, this is problematic. We're going to take it away. Just kidding.
It's back.
It's back. So
when I think of the characters that Mr. Nezer plays as a stock character, he's definitely like a John Goodman character to me. He is usually like the businessman. His first appearance, I think, is whenever he appears as Mr. Nezer, and Rad, Shack, and Benny's supposed to be like Nebuchadnezzar, and that's where his name came from.
Okay.
And he's always sort of like the antagonist, which again is problematic since his character is based off, like someone with like black influences, and so being problematic, being the antagonist all the time. But normally he's not necessarily a bad guy. There are no real, except maybe in Larry Boy, there are no real bad guys in VeggieTales. There's just someone who can learn,
someone who hasn't yet come to Jesus.
Exactly. Like I'm thinking that in that Rick and Morty episode, where the train episode where they're like, we must accept God as our savior.
Pray, Morty, pray. Yeah.
Mr. Nezer is most iconic, at least for our generation, for the bunny song. The bunny. Oh, I love the bunny. Oh, it depends on the verse.
Okay, shit.
But my favorite part of that is the background singers. I don't want to play on a day that is sunny. I just want a spoon and a fork and a bunny. Okay. I don't want to laugh at a joke that is funny. I just want a spoon and a fork and a bunny.
Bitch.
Again, that's why I'm going to have to come back, because these songs, look, I'm a music girly. I majored in this. And also there's just something about it that's very Phineas and Ferb adjacent. I'll talk about that later, but I just love the music.
Okay, here's the hierarchy. Wagner, Ethel Cain, VeggieTales creator.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to Mr. Lunt. Mr. Lunt is usually like a sidekick in the earlier episodes to Mr. Nezer, so he's also sort of an antagonist. He's like this real sleazy guy. He wears a Panama hat and he's got a thin mustache. He used to have a gold tooth, they took it away. He's just this real kind of like slimy character. And I didn't realize until I was researching this, but apparently he has a Hispanic accent, which again, I didn't realize it growing up.
Yeah, do you not remember how he talks like down belly button? Like, it's bad.
I didn't pick up on that being Hispanic. I don't know why.
Well, because it's so bad.
Fair. But he's actually raised in New Jersey, and we know that because in the Cheeseburger song at the end, Archibald says, I thought you were going to talk about growing up in Connecticut. And he goes, I was raised in New Jersey. So he's canonically from New Jersey.
The VeggieTales fan fiction writers like, write that down.
Yeah, and he's usually got he's sort of like an agitator, and he's got this offbeat humor. He loves to go back and forth. He's like, well, I don't know, that kind of thing. He just likes to go off about things. And he has no eyes. And so he has to use his hat or his eyebrows for expression. Some of the characters don't have eyes. And of course he is most known, his first big appearance was for Cheeseburger. Yeah. He's also one of the pirates who don't do anything. So later on he sort of becomes less of an aggravative character and more of a supporting character. Him and Larry are kind of buddies in my brain. They're buds.
I love that.
Backstage, they after they get done wrapping up, Mr. Lunt and Larry go out for a couple beers.
Yeah. Larry and Bob they love each other, but they're open.
They need time apart.
Yeah.
Like every healthy couple, they need to like spend. Larry has his friends and Bob has his. Speaking of Bob's friends, I think that Archibald is probably one of Bob's friends.
Okay.
Archibald is also asparagus. By the way, Mr. Nezzer is a zucchini. Mr. Lunt is a decorative gourd.
Decorative specifically. That's how you know he's gay.
That is how you. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Maybe it is like a poly situation, like Mr. Lunt.
Hey.
Maybe like Larry's the hinge.
Larry's the hint. Okay. Or maybe they just both have side pieces. And this, because an asparagus is kind of like a cucumber if you think about it. Phallic.
Okay, well that's just the vegetables.
An hour of me saying phallic over and over.
So Archibald's stock character is he is the proper British man. Again, we haven't like we also disrespect British people. Don't worry. He's got a monocle. He's always just sort of like he's just fancy. That's basically his whole thing. Is he's always in like a fancy role. He's been a butler. That's usually what he's known for is being Alfred in Larry Boy.
Okay.
And then there's Pa Grape, another eyeless character, and he's sort of the wise old man. He's usually the one giving out advice. He's actually the captain. I didn't know this again. He's the captain of the pirates who don't do anything.
I am familiar with the pirates who don't do anything. I am familiar with them.
Did you know they had their own movie?
A movie?
They had their own movie too. Yeah, they made it out. They made it out of the show, and they had their own movie.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that they got that opportunity.
Me too. It was really good for them. It's kind of like Try Guys, Lou Burger. So there's at least one person out there who's a Try Guys fan, but the Pirates Don't Do Anything was like Larry's Lou Burger.
I love that for them.
Yeah, and so apparently he was held back canonically in the second grade for 13 years. Pa Grape. I learned so much interesting stuff when I was researching these characters I just didn't know. He's canonically Jewish, I believe.
Okay.
He has a Yiddish accent.
Wait. What? I thought it was a Christian TV show.
Yeah. But
Pa Grape is going to hell.
moving on, there's Jimmy and Jerry Gourd. And so if you think of Bob and Larry as Abbott and Costello, picture Jimmy and Jerry Gourd as Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They're just the dumb ones, like the oh bless your hearts. And they're also like supposed to be like canonically vying after Bob and Larry's roles because there is one episode that starts with them behind a Bob and Larry like cardboard cutout trying to pretend to be them. And so they're just like they kind of give also like Phineas and Ferb energy because there's Jimmy, except not child geniuses. Mm-hmm. There's Jimmy who is very talkative and sort of like making the shots, and then Jerry's just kind of like, I don't know, Jimmy. He's just kind of like, you know?
That's us, but we alternate roles.
Yeah. One of us nonverbal, the other one just won't shut up.
You're literally the two sides of ADHD.
Exactly. Moving on, these are sort of like the background characters getting into it. Not background characters, but reoccurring characters. Mm-hmm. Then there are the French peas. So the French peas are sort of like mischievous. Sometimes they play kids, sometimes they don't, but they're very mischievous kind of evil. Not actually evil, but we talked about Mischief Day last time. They're the trick-or-treaters.
They are trick-or-treating.
So Jean-Claude and Christophe P. debuted portraying Philistines in Dave and the Giant Pickle as an allusion to the French soldiers and Monty Python.
That was one hell of a sentence, I will tell you.
So their characters began as an allusion to the French soldiers and Monty Python, like I said. And so like it's just general antics. So they're like not really evil. They're just kind of like a nuisance. And so like in Josh and the Big Wall, that's when you get introduced to Philippe, who is the third of the French peas. And like if you remember, I don't know if you saw this one on Josh and the Big Wall, like they're like throwing slushies and they do the keep walking.
This was the straw that broke the camel's back.
See, every time we've talked about it, I bet it was those goddamn slushies.
Mm-hmm. It was. I remember being at my great grandmother's house. Shout out to Tootie, you dead as hell, love you. And watching that one, and my dad like seeing it on the TV, or it was my mom. And then I remember them saying like, we don't watch VeggieTales anymore. Like that's so disrespectful. They did not have slushy poured on them. They were killed brutally. And it's like, okay, well, I'm 5. I don't think I want to think about people having their guts strewn about on the floor.
Yeah, the Old Testament isn't really something that the material isn't really catered towards children. It's some tough source material.
No, controversial opinion. Maybe it's okay to talk to kids about difficult philosophical and theological concepts via slushy rather than gore.
Rather than gore, yeah.
I think that the VeggieTales creator had it right that the more universally hated thing is the French.
Oh.
Like onions are controversial. Kids are like, ooh, onions. But the French, we can all come together to agree. Die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and speaking of French, there's also another French character. Oh? She started off French, Madame Blueberry.
Okay.
Which, let's talk about Madame Blueberry. She is her original role is an allusion to the book Madame Bovary, which is a really weird reference for a
kid's show
about, like Bible stories.
So this is the trans bitch.
Oh, absolutely. I see her as like a hedonistic aunt.
So me.
And she's also not the size of a blueberry. Because like if she was the size of a blueberry, she'd be like French pea size, but she's more like Baba tomato size.
So she is trans. Oh, she's like, I wasn't born in a blueberry's body, but I identify as a blueberry, even though I'm huge. So some of us are bigger than what we claim to be.
Also, I learned recently that now Larry has like moved up. I guess he's getting older. He's now playing like father roles. Which is so weird. Like, what? Yeah, you hate to see your favorite actors grow up.
So you identify with Larry, and now you're seeing Larry being like a father and stuff. How does that make you feel?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thinking about them as like actors, I would love for like a VeggieTales Untucked kind of situation.
Well, okay, so funny you should mention that. I don't know if y'all know this, but they had a theatrical release movie, Jonah, the VeggieTales movie, went out into theaters, and the creators, so Phil, who's the voice of Bob, is also the voice of Mr. Lunt, and they did, Larry and Mr. Lunt did like a podcast commentary of Jonah, and it's just them watching it and talking, and they're making pop culture references. Like,
I love that.
And it is, I've listened to it a few times. It is so funny.
VeggieTales Untucked podcast.
Yeah.
I would like a VeggieTales Untucked where it's like between scenes or like at the end of the show, it just cuts to them in the back, like drinking. I was going to say Bloody Marys, but that would be a little bit problematic.
Yeah, because Bob is just sitting there in the corner like,
so about that.
So moving from the sort of characters and their roles in the film, the episodes, we're going to talk about the references and the homages in the show. And so I think if you look at any piece of art, and it is art, VeggieTales.
Oh, mama, the highest.
Whenever you look at what they reference, you get a better look at like sort of like the psyche of the artist. You can see what influenced them, and that to me that's pretty important because like you kind of see where they're coming from, and it helps you see things in a newer light.
So we actually are doing a psychoanalytical reading.
A little bit.
Okay.
So you have the Big Idea, but because that's the name of the company. You have the Big Idea homages. There's Minnesota Kook, which is an obvious play on Indiana Jones. There's like a sumo champion wrestler episode, the same episode that has the St. Patrick's Day thing, by the way.
Okay.
And that's sort of like Turandot meets Rocky. Turandot's an opera and that's a pretty silly thing to be referencing as an opera. Mm-hmm. And then there's also, of course, Larry Boy. And now there's a greater League of Incredible Vegetables in that universe. Okay. And, Larry Boy's thing is, I am that hero. He's obviously Batman. What I love about Larry Boy in particular and his references is you're taking a character like Batman who is so dark and so deeply traumatized, and you're just making him silly goofy. Like he has plunger ears, and just thinking about the character is so funny.
That's so you energy though.
No, I remember we were on Southern Style together, which is like an orientation team for the college that we met at. And they asked what superhero we resonated with, and you said Wanda, Scarlet Witch, and I said Larry Boy, and I think the only people that laughed were Riley McGregor and Max Greeno.
Shout out to y'all.
But it really is because like he's just like this guy who has like a lot of pressure on him, and he's like just figuring things out, but he's also just being goofball the whole time.
Just Larry Boy in a bar, like brooding over his dark past. Meanwhile, it's a cucumber with plungers for ears.
And another funny thing, especially in the earlier episodes, is because it's a Christian-based show. Obviously, the way that you overcome like the villain is by learning the lesson and having this redemptive moment.
So we're doing New Testament way of overcoming the villain.
Yeah, well, that is the thing.
So we're not like setting them on fire.
What you just said, I think that is the difference between. It literally is like the old VeggieTales is very like Old Testament Christianity, and then it moved more into like a New Testament way of thinking about it.
So the Old Testament and New Testament (parentheses VeggieTales).
Exactly that. What was I even talking about? Oh, so the way that the way the villain is beaten is by learning the lesson, and so Larry Boy doesn't really do anything. He like isn't really the one who saves the day. More times than not, Junior is the one who saves the day because he's like, I broke the plate, and that's what defeats the fib in the first one.
Okay.
And then I think in the rumor weed, he's like, I started the rumor. Alfred's not a robot. But so Larry Boy never does anything, but everyone is just like, oh, it's Larry Boy. He's here to save the day. And I wonder, I want to see the Larry Boy origin story.
Like, how did he get that title?
I want to see Larry Boy whenever he fell into a toilet and needed where did he get the plunger powers from? Obviously it's a Batman thing, so he's just rich, but where is the trauma? I want to see the Larry Boy origin story.
I mean, if we're thinking of trauma for Cucumber and it has something to do with toilets, I don't know. My mind is immediately like, girl, somebody about old Larry on Valentine's Day. He got used up.
No,
they tried to flush him. He got stuck. Drowning, got out.
So yeah, even in Larry, so I guess you do kind of see in the Larry Boy show, you do sort of see him be more of a hero. That is an interesting show, and it has like new characters that aren't the original VeggieTales cast. So I guess that is our Larry Boy representation, sort of the other sides of Larry. He goes to superhero school in it. Okay. It's very funny. I love Larry. Larry Boy is my favorite iteration in the VeggieTales cinematic universe. So there's a very special place in my heart.
I love that.
Obviously, there's also the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, as we talked about, which is just, it's like a Pirates of Panzan meets Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. They're just silly pirates.
Silly pirates.
I also kind of think it's a reference to Ray Stevens' the pirate I Want to Sing and Dance. Have you seen that one?
Yes, Ray Stevens. We're gonna have to do an episode on Ray Stevens. Love him.
Another musical / literary piece they reference is, instead of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they have a short called Dr. Jiggle and Mr. Sly, and it's about dancers. Like, he becomes a dancer at night, and then
That's
course
me after 3 shots of tequila. I turn into Dr. Jiggle and Mr. Sly.
That's just us. Like, I'm
Dr.
like
Jiggle.
this.
You're Mr. Sly.
Okay, word. I was gonna go the other way around, but Slay.
Well, we contain multitudes.
We contain multitudes.
Yin and yang. I contain the jiggle within the slide.
And I am the Sly within the jiggle.
Mama.
Hi, Mom. And then there's also Lord of the Beans, which we are talking girlies. We love Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and so Lord of the Beans.
This was one of the ones I was allowed to watch growing up because it was like a parody. It wasn't like making fun of the Bible or whatever. And I was a Lord of the Rings kid. I loved it. And before I even watched it, I loved Lord of the Beans. I remember instead of Aragorn, it's Ear of Corn. Instead of Legolas, it's Legolam. Like, and then
it's just so witty with the naming. It's
so
me.
witty.
It's so my type of humor.
Right. And then like it's so good. The ends blowing raspberries going.
Yes. And then them losing their, because like that is just funny.
It's so good.
And one of the funniest like little like winks in that whole thing is actually like a smaller reference is in the silly songs with Larry. He's like singing my bibbidi 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 elf. He's an Elvish impersonator.
I think about that all the time.
They take his ears off. He's like, your ears, you're not a real elf.
You're an
and
Elvish
he's just
impersonator.
and he's singing Elvis songs.
It's a wordplay on Elvis. I remember being a kid and not like getting that because I didn't really have like all the cultural references to understand like, oh, elf, but also Elvis and Elvis impersonators are a thing.
And that's the thing.
And then the moment I got it though, I felt so grown. I was like, Mama, I get it.
What I love about VeggieTales is that it is full of these Easter eggs that like a lot of the jokes are not written for the kids. Like, they're written because like, what kid is going to get that joke? There's a clip. Actually, let me show you this clip right now.
Wait, pause. I think I just resurfaced a memory. In the Elvish impersonator, doesn't his wife come in and like yell at him in Korean or something?
I don't think it's Korean. I don't know what it is. I think it's
Is it Elvish?
I think it's Elvish. Yeah, she's yelling at him in Elvish.
Oh my God.
Maybe.
Love that for him.
Okay, so I'm going to show you this clip real quick. This is some of the jokes that I'm going to show you a couple of jokes that I just show like there's no way this was just written for kids. So here's the first one.
Larry is greeted now by an agent of the Internal Revenue Service.
Who are you? I'm from the IRS.
And they reference him a bunch. There's
IRS agent?
There's a couple of references to like taxes and stuff. Like, there's one whole one of the whole main plot lines is it's like a Huckleberry Finn kind of thing. And Larry is Tom Sawyer, and so Bob's whole thing, he's trying to go. There's no one set on the Mississippi that has like a tax collector services. And then the narrator says, what Bob has failed to consider is that this takes place in 1904, and the IRS was not established until. He's just like, it's just so funny.
Oh my God!
It's like, what 5-year-old knows about taxes?
The creators having a fixation on taxes.
Yeah,
we should check their files.
I guess it's maybe like towards the beginning, it was just like, what is something all adults find funny?
Taxes.
Yeah, so that's a small reference that they have. I feel like that's a running bit is like taxes and stuff. And then there's some smaller references like within Larry Boy, the rumor weed. I didn't realize this until my most recent rewatch. Like the rumor weed herself is based off the plant from Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah. I remember the rumor weed one.
Yeah.
That was like, I'm a rumor weed.
Ooh.
Yes,
A tiny
because
bit
it's like
story.
musical and also has like the teeth and the. As like I feel like a lot of things are kind of references to what is it, Audrey too?
And they also did like such a cunty portrayal of the church gossip.
Yes,
Because you know a woman exactly like the rumor weed, which is
Girl.
like, you know what I heard.
If y'all did not grow up with like church gossip ladies, like let me tell y'all, nothing. You think small town like gossip travels fast. You think internet gossip travels fast. If you do anything within earshot.
Wait till Karen hears it. Like literally, I'm thinking her name
Uh-huh.
was Karen. Wait till she
Karen.
finds out.
Wait till Mabel or Patty.
Uh-huh.
Wait, once they find out, Mama. Not only will it go around the whole church, it will be delivered like this. Give me a 1, 2, 3.
Action.
Hey, Sister Kayla, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. It's Sister Eden. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. There's just something weighing heavy on my mind.
Oh, please tell me. What can I pray for you?
Well, the other day I just saw Brother Sam's car. It was pulling up to somebody else's house than I'm usual seeing him at.
now, do you know, I heard that during the fellowship course, Sam made his way over to Susanna's pew last week.
Susanna's pew?
And now is she living on Hickory Lane still?
Last I saw, she was spending a whole lot of time over on Elk Grove Avenue.
Insane.
And nothing said, but so much shade is thrown.
So much so. There is this TikToker. I mean, it's not the best quality, but she like does these like southern
I love
southern
her.
interpretations. Yeah, it's very wholesome and very like relatable. There's also obviously in the earlier episodes there is a huge amount of Monty Python represented, sort of like the French peas, like a whole character based off that. And so that's something he definitely talks about. Is this they both loved Monty Python and. I love Monty Python so much I think Monty Python changed the direction of like comedy in general.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it's definitely evident in VeggieTales humor, I think. And what sticks out most about the VeggieTales is like how quick and witty it is. Like they love a fourth wall break. There'll be so many times they'll just like have this really like Abbott and Costello who's on first kind of conversation, and they'll just go what, and then they'll both just look at the camera, and there's just so many little bits that they do. And I am a girl who loves to communicate in bits. I love to do a bit. I love to do a scene. I love a little wink. And
we are notorious for being absolutely insufferable to hang out with together.
well known for. And I always feel bad because I feel like people are like they're so making fun of me, especially with Sam. Like I feel like we talking and just start laughing, and he's just like.
It's just I'm so sorry if you ever hung out with Kayl and I, and it seems like we're just communicating in a different language.
We can't help it.
It's called girl bits.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on girl bits.
The girl bits. And so like every time I watch it, I can guarantee that there's going to be at least one moment where I'm cackling even now. Like I watch VeggieTales probably once every other month, and whenever I watch it, I'll watch like all of them over the course of a week. And it's definitely got a very similar vibe in the writing style to Phineas and Ferb, which if you don't know, 2 things about me, I love VeggieTales, I love Phineas and Ferb, and I think it's the way it combines musical comedy with witty comedy, physical comedy, fourth wall break comedies, it just like ticks so many boxes for me. It just like will tell a really good, cohesive, funnier, overarching bit while also throwing in little one-liners in there. It's so clever.
I love that.
Yeah. And obviously, as we said before, it is not a perfect show by any means. And I'm sure a lot of the reason why I love it so much is because I am a kid at heart. I am a Larry. I am just a silly, goofy gal who's trying her best. And so it's comforting to me. And overall, I think that's I think it is a comfort show to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And even if you don't watch it now and you're just someone who looks back on it fondly, it's one of those, like, there's not many medias and aspects of the Christian faith I can look back on fondly now. But VeggieTales is definitely one of those that I just like can still feel like a kid again.
I love that.
I love it.
I think also as former Christians, as people who are going through deconstruction, it is important to have a firm grasp on what Christianity gave you that is still part of you, and having something as simple and as direct and as material as this children's show that I loved then and I still love is something that is Christian and that made me part of who I am and that I still enjoy. And it's having those footholds of these are the things that I can take with me, helps you identify other things that you are like, I can take this with me comfortably. And maybe helps you identify some other things that you aren't comfortable taking with you.
And before we move into our verse of the day, I do want to show something that leads me to believe that Phil Vischer would probably find somewhere in his heart to be on the side of the drag queens.
Oh, I would love.
Don't be ridiculous. It's tradition. In Shakespeare's day, all the women's roles were played by men.
I think we're gonna get letters about this.
It's just like the obvious saying that, like, this is performative. I don't think people are going to like this, though, but it's performative. So
That's so cute.
I saw
love
that today, and I was like,
I think we're going to get letters about this. Oh my God. Love
but
that.
yeah, so that's VeggieTales.
I don't know who would do drag associated with VeggieTales. That's crazy. All right, so is it my turn to do verse of the
It
day?
is your turn to do verse of the day.
Okay, today, since it's my first time doing verse of the day, I thought I'd do my favorite. If you give me a
Excellent,
moment to pull it up.
Pull it up. Looks like QWERTY has a verse for us. And so that we have learned the Bible says a lot to say. God has a lot to say in his book.
Let me cut you off and say I am cheating a bit today.
Okay, word.
I'm doing 3 separate verses.
Acceptable.
Okay, it is Ezekiel 23:19 through 21. My favorite verses. Starting with 19, yet she multiplied her acts of promiscuity, remembering the days of her youth when she acted like a prostitute in the land of Egypt, and lusted after their lovers, whose sexual members were like those of donkeys, and whose emissions were like those of stallions. So you revisited the indecency of your youth when the Egyptians caressed your nipples to enjoy your youthful breasts.
Jesus Christ.
Exactly, actually, yeah. I'm just still obsessed with the fact that they're talking about the dick size of a donkey and the cum load of a stallion. Like the average reader in like ancient Middle East would be like, oh yeah, everybody's familiar with the cum load size of a stallion.
It's that big?
Oh, okay, word. Yeah.
And so, like, she's not even being a prostitute. She's just in her slut era because she's acting like a
Acting
prostitute.
like a prostitute. He said, I know you're not a whore, but you're giving whore.
You're giving whore, but she's just like being a slut, being in your slut era in Egypt
Slut
with like
era.
getting your nipples caressed on the daily.
Excuse me, your youthful nipples.
Oh, of course.
Your youthful breasts.
Your big, bouncy, beautiful, biblical breasts.
biblically accurate boobies. It's just
But
1,000
Dushy
nipples.
got in a circle is just boobs.
Biblically accurate boobies.
We need to make an image of that.
I would
Biblically accurate
love
boobies.
new T-shirt idea. Biblically accurate boobies. It's a ring of nipples around where your tits would be.
Word. So as we're wrapping up, I want to go back and talk about something else that I think made VeggieTales so special for me personally, and it's the way they end the show and how you end the show is pretty important because it's like the last thing that the kids are going to hear, and they don't go. Obviously, it's still sort of indoctrination, but what they say is God made you special and He loves you very much. And
That's
as a kid who
sweet.
struggled with like feeling unimportant and not feeling loved, being able to like hear that, hey, you are unique and you are worthy of love. I think it's a great sentiment. You can take religion out of it and just say, hey, you are unique and you are worthy of being loved, which I think is a really great and gay concept.
I love that too. You know what? To end the show, how about God loves you? Wait, what is it?
But not enough to save you.
But not enough to save you. Ethel Kane coming soon. Ethel
Kane
Kane
coming
episode
soon.
next week for sure. It's God made you special.
And He loves you very much. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you all so much for listening to today's service. And as always, thank you to our music minister, Brother Sam, for creating that beautiful piece of music that is our intro and outro.
And if you are a visitor with us today, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and rating us 5 stars wherever you're listening, and if you love the show next week when you come back, why don't you bring a friend?
And remember, God is gay all the time.
And all the time, God is gay.